You are the master of your fate. Let's begin. There is a quiet thief in your life, one that doesn't steal money, time, or opportunity directly, but something far more valuable, the power to become who you were meant to be. It moves silently through your words, disguised as humility, caution, or even realism. And most people never notice it until decades have passed and their dreams remain unnamed, unclaimed, unrealized. I've watched brilliant minds hesitate at the edge of greatness, not because they lacked vision or ability, but because they refused again and again to call themselves what they already were becoming. They said, "I'm trying to start a business," instead of "I am a businessman." They whispered, "I write sometimes," rather than declaring, "I am a writer." And in that hesitation, in that subtle denial of identity, they gave away their authority before they ever claimed it. Language is not just communication, it is construction. Every time you speak about yourself, you are building either a foundation for growth or a prison of limitation, and the words you choose matter more than you realize. You will never rise to the level of your goals, you will only rise to the level of your language, because your mind treats repetition as truth, and if you keep describing yourself as incomplete, uncertain, or in progress, then that is exactly how you will remain. This isn't about arrogance or false confidence, it's about alignment. It's about closing the gap between what you do and who you say you are, because until you name your purpose with certainty, it will always feel out of reach, like a visitor passing through rather than a resident taking root. Today, we're going to confront the silent sabotage of vague self-description, uncover why you resist claiming your identity, and put into your hands a simple but transformative practice that, when applied daily, reshapes not only how others see you, but how you see yourself. The first and most essential step toward lasting achievement. You've likely told yourself that you're being humble, careful, or realistic when you soften your language, when you say "I'm working on it" instead of "this is who I am" or "I hope to get there someday" rather than "I am building this now." But let me speak plainly. What you call humility may actually be hesitation, dressed in good intentions, and what you call realism might simply be fear, wearing the mask of practicality. I've seen too many people wrap their dreams in vague phrases like a protective shield, believing they are guarding themselves from disappointment, when in truth, they are only delaying the moment of commitment, the moment when they must stand fully behind who they are becoming. Consider the man I once met at a small gathering, sharp-minded, deeply knowledgeable about finance, already managing investments for friends and family, with remarkable success. When asked what he did, he smiled modestly and said, "Oh, I dabble in real estate and stocks, just helping people out here and there." I watched as two potential clients walked away unimpressed, not because his work lacked merit, but because his words lacked conviction. Later, I asked him why he didn't simply say, "I'm a financial advisor," or "I help people grow their wealth." He hesitated, then admitted, "I don't have a firm, I'm not licensed, I don't want to overstate anything." To which I replied, "You're not overstating, you're owning." There's a difference between lying and leading with identity. That conversation stayed with me, not because it was unusual, but because it was so common, this quiet refusal to name one's own path, even when the evidence is already present in daily action. The cost of such vagueness is rarely immediate, but it compounds over time. Each time you downplay your role, each time you hide behind trying or learning or just starting, you signal to your subconscious mind that this thing is not yet real, not yet worthy of full belief. And when you don't believe in it fully, you won't fight for it fiercely, invest in it boldly, or speak of it confidently, and the world, ever responsive to energy and certainty, will treat it the same way. You don't need permission to name your journey, you need courage. Not the kind that roars, but the kind that whispers, "This is mine," and means it. There is a powerful, invisible mechanism at work every time you describe yourself, whether in conversation, in thought, or even in silence. And that mechanism is the gradual shaping of your self-concept through repetition. You may believe that identity comes after achievement, that you must first succeed before you can rightfully claim a title. But I have observed the opposite to be true among those who consistently rise. They adopt the identity before the world recognizes it, and in doing so, they begin to think, act, and decide from that position long before external proof arrives. This is not illusion, it is strategy. The human mind does not merely respond to logic, it responds to pattern, and when you repeatedly tell yourself, "I am building confidence," or "I'm getting better at speaking up," you are reinforcing a state of lack, keeping the desired quality perpetually in the future. But when you say, "I am a confident man," or "I speak with clarity and purpose," even if it feels slightly uncomfortable at first, you create a psychological tension between your current behavior and your declared identity, one that your subconscious mind will naturally seek to resolve by aligning your actions with your words. I've seen this in men like Edison, who referred to himself as an inventor of systems long before he held a single patent, and Carnegie, who called himself a builder of industries while still working in a steel mill. They understood that naming is not a reflection of where you are, it is a declaration of the standard you intend to live by. Modern psychology confirms what I documented decades ago. Self-labeling activates neural pathways associated with ownership and responsibility, making you more likely to make decisions consistent with that label. When a person begins to think of themselves as a writer, they start protecting their writing time. When they see themselves as a leader, they stop waiting for permission to act. The shift is subtle, but its effects are irreversible. This is why vague language is so dangerous. It keeps you in a state of indefinite preparation where nothing is required of you because nothing is claimed. But the moment you name yourself with precision, the game changes. Expectations rise, not just from others, but from within. And it is from that internal pressure, that quiet demand to be congruent with your own words, that true growth begins. There comes a defining moment in every meaningful pursuit. Not when the first dollar is earned or the first public recognition arrives, but much earlier, in the quiet solitude of self-declaration, when what you've been doing finally becomes who you are. This moment is rarely celebrated, never photographed, and often goes unnoticed even by the person experiencing it, yet it marks the true beginning of transformation. I have studied countless individuals who worked diligently for years, writing, building, creating, serving, yet remained emotionally disconnected from their own progress because they refused to cross that invisible threshold where action gives birth to identity. They said, "I'm starting a business," long after they had become one. They insisted, "I'm learning to lead," while their teams looked to them for direction every single day. And in that gap between behavior and belief, power leaks away, momentum stalls, and doubt creeps in. But then there are those who make the shift, not with fanfare, but with intention. I recall a woman I met during my later lectures, a former school teacher who had begun offering private coaching to young professionals struggling with career clarity. She had already helped dozens, charged for her services, structured programs, and received glowing testimonials, yet when asked what she did, she would shrug and say, "Oh, I just help people think through things." Nothing bold, nothing certain. Then one morning, after reading a passage in Think and Grow Rich about assuming the feeling of success, she sat down and wrote a simple sentence: "I am a career mastery coach." She spoke it aloud, not to impress anyone, but to test whether it fit. At first it felt foreign, almost presumptuous, but by the third repetition, something shifted. She told me it was as if I finally welcomed myself into the room I'd been standing outside of for 2 years. From that day forward, her language changed, her posture changed, her pricing changed, and within 6 months, her income tripled, not because she learned new skills, but because she began acting from a place of ownership rather than apology. This is the power of claiming. It doesn't alter your circumstances overnight, but it alters your internal authority, and from that, everything else follows. Thomas Edison never waited until he had perfected the light bulb to call himself an inventor. He claimed the title the moment he decided to solve the problem. Henry Ford didn't wait for mass production to begin before declaring, "I am bringing automobiles to the common man." They understood that being precedes doing, and doing precedes having. You do not become what you achieve what you believe yourself to be. So I ask you now, where in your life are you still standing at the edge, doing the work, but denying the name? When will you stop describing your journey and start embodying its truth? Because the world does not reward effort alone, it rewards those who carry themselves as if the outcome were already certain. Beneath every hesitation to claim your identity, there is a fear, sometimes so deeply buried it feels like caution, sometimes so familiar it masquerades as humility, but always present, quietly shaping your words and limiting your reach. It does not announce itself with alarm or drama. It whispers in the moments before you speak, when you choose a softer phrase, a more modest title, a safer version of yourself. You say, "I'm exploring entrepreneurship," instead of "I am an entrepreneur," not because it's untrue, but because somewhere inside, you're afraid of what might happen if you say it plainly, if people expect more, if you're held accountable, if you fail while wearing the name. That fear is natural. I felt it myself when I first began compiling the principles of success, standing before men far wealthier, more accomplished, more renowned than I could ever imagine becoming, wondering what right I had to position myself as a teacher, a philosopher, a guide. I called myself a researcher, an observer, a student, anything to avoid the weight of expectation that comes with a bolder label. But Andrew Carnegie saw through it. One evening, after reviewing an early manuscript, he looked up and said, "Napoleon, you are not merely studying success, you are teaching it. Call it what it is." His words struck me not because they were kind, but because they were true. And truth, when spoken by someone who sees you clearly, has a way of dismantling the illusions we hide behind. That moment taught me that the resistance to naming is rarely about accuracy, it's about the emotional cost of ownership. When you call yourself a leader, you can no longer hide in the crowd. When you declare yourself an artist, you can no longer blame the market for your silence. When you say, I am building wealth, you must then confront every decision that contradicts that claim. This is why so many prefer the safety of potential, the comfort of saying, I could or I might, rather than stepping into the vulnerability of I am. Because potential requires no proof, no consistency, no daily alignment. It allows you to dream without risk. But let me be clear, potential unclaimed is indistinguishable from apathy, and the longer you delay the act of naming, the more you train your mind to live in the future tense, forever just around the corner from real commitment. Fear will always be there, doubt will always whisper, but courage is not the absence of those things, it is the decision to speak your truth anyway, to assign yourself the title not when it's easy, but when it's necessary, knowing that the first person who must believe it is you. Language is not merely a tool for communication. It is the architecture of thought, the invisible framework upon which your decisions, habits, and self-concept are built. When you speak about yourself with precision, clarity, and certainty, you do more than inform others, you instruct your own mind about what is real, what is possible, and what is expected. This is why the shift from vague conditional language to definitive present tense declaration is not a small adjustment. It is a strategic recalibration of your internal operating system. Consider the difference between saying, I'm trying to be more confident, and I am a confident man. The first keeps you in a state of perpetual effort, always striving, never arriving, always justifying inaction with the excuse that you're still in the process. The second establishes a standard, a fixed point of reference from which your subconscious begins to measure every choice, every conversation, every challenge. You don't need to feel it fully at first. That is not the point. The power lies in the repetition, in the daily act of aligning your words with the identity you intend to embody, because over time, your behavior will bend toward consistency. I've watched men transform their entire trajectory not through sudden breakthroughs or lucky breaks, but simply by changing the way they introduce themselves. One young man came to me struggling to gain clients for his consulting work. He described himself as figuring things out and helping where I can. I asked him to rewrite that to say instead, I am a business strategist. I help leaders clarify their vision and execute with confidence. He resisted at first, afraid it would sound false, but he agreed to try it. Within 2 weeks, he reported that conversations felt different, shorter, sharper, more decisive. People stopped questioning his value because he had stopped implying it was negotiable. That is the subtle but undeniable force of definitive language. It removes ambiguity, and in doing so, it commands respect. Not the kind that comes from arrogance, but the kind that arises when someone speaks with quiet certainty about who they are and what they offer. It is the difference between asking for permission and stating your presence. And this applies not only to professional identity, but to every area of life. To say I'm working on being disciplined is to admit failure before the day begins. To say I am a disciplined man is to set a standard that your actions must meet. The brain does not distinguish sharply between fact and repeated assertion. It treats consistent input as truth. So if you keep describing yourself as uncertain, hesitant, or still learning, that is exactly how you will remain regardless of your talent or desire. But when you adopt language that reflects the person you are becoming, you create a silent pressure within yourself to close the gap between word and deed. This is not magic, it is mechanics, the same mechanics used by every great achiever I've studied, whether they called it faith, vision, or self-command. They knew that before the world could see them clearly, they had to name themselves aloud, in private, again and again, until the title no longer felt like a stretch, but like home. There are moments in life that seem small, when they happen just a sentence, a glance, a quiet correction, but which later reveal themselves to be turning points. The invisible hinges upon which an entire destiny swings. One such moment came early in my work when I was still shaping the foundation of what would become Think and Grow Rich, traveling from city to city, interviewing men of great achievement, trying to extract not just their methods, but their mindset. I was gathering knowledge, yes, but I was also wrestling with doubt. Doubt about my purpose, my voice, my right to stand among these titans as anything more than a recorder of their wisdom. I introduced myself humbly, always as a student of success, a researcher, someone studying the laws of achievement. I believed this was accurate. I believed it was modest. I did not yet understand that accuracy without ambition is a form of surrender, and that modesty without self-recognition can become a prison. Then came the evening I met Andrew Carnegie in his private study after hours, following a long interview about the role of definiteness of purpose in building empires. As we reviewed my notes, he paused, looked up, and said, "Napoleon, how do you describe yourself to others?" I repeated my usual line, that I was studying the principles of success, learning from men like him so I might one day share them. He leaned back, folded his hands, and said, "You are not merely studying it, you are already teaching it. Every question you ask, every pattern you observe, every insight you record, this is the work of a philosopher, not a student. Why won't you call it what it is?" His words stopped me cold. I had no answer that could withstand the weight of his gaze. He wasn't flattering me. He wasn't being kind. He was stating a truth I had been avoiding, that I had already crossed the threshold into mastery through consistent effort, deep inquiry, and unwavering focus, yet I refused to claim it. And in that refusal, I was limiting my impact before it had even begun. That night, I rewrote how I spoke about myself, not with pride, but with precision. I began saying, "I am uncovering and teaching the principles of success," and something shifted immediately. Doors opened faster. Men listened more closely. My own thinking became bolder, clearer, more authoritative, not because I had changed who I was, but because I had finally named it. This is the gift Carnegie gave me, the understanding that sometimes another person must see your potential before you can bear it yourself, and that true mentorship is not just guidance, but naming the act of calling forth the identity that lies just beneath the surface of hesitation. He knew what I would come to teach others, that leadership, influence, and achievement begin not with external validation, but with the internal courage to accept the title before you feel fully worthy of it. Because worthiness is not a prerequisite, it is the result of the claim. Now comes the moment where insight becomes action, the point at which understanding transforms into personal power through a simple, deliberate practice I call the name it to claim it exercise. This is not a mere affirmation to be whispered passively into the mirror, nor is it a slogan to post on a vision board and forget. It is a precise, intentional act of self-definition, designed to align your spoken identity with the truth of what you are building, becoming, and committing to. The men I studied, Carnegie, Ford, Edison, did not wait for permission, applause, or perfect conditions to declare their purpose. They wrote their own titles in the quiet of their minds and repeated them until they rang true. You will do the same. Begin by choosing the area of your life where you feel the gap between effort and identity, the role you are fulfilling but not owning, the skill you've developed but downplay, the vision you carry but hesitate to name. Is it as a leader, a creator, a healer, a builder of wealth, a speaker of truth? Whatever it is, bring it into focus with clarity. Then, write 3 sentences in the present tense using definitive language, free from qualifiers like trying, hoping, someday, or eventually. These sentences must feel believable enough to say without flinching, yet bold enough to stretch you. They should reflect not where you are finished, but where you are firmly headed with certainty. For example, if you've been quietly developing your ability to guide others through change, you might write, "I am a transformation coach. I help people break through fear and step into their power. My words create clarity and confidence." If you've been building a business one decision at a time, you might say, "I am a businessman. I solve real problems with real solutions. I grow my enterprise with discipline and vision." The key is consistency, not perfection. Speak these sentences aloud, standing if possible, looking yourself in the eye, because the body registers declaration differently than thought alone. Do this daily, not as a performance, but as a recommitment, a ritual no different in importance than signing a contract or making a public promise. Over time, resistance will fade, not because the fear disappears, but because repetition builds familiarity, and familiarity breeds belief. This is how identity is forged, not in a single breakthrough, but in the quiet, persistent act of naming yourself into being, day after day, until the words no longer feel like aspiration, but like truth. And when that shift occurs, when you finally hear your own voice and recognize it as belonging to the person you've been striving to become, then you will understand what Carnegie meant when he said, "You are already teaching it," because you won't need him to tell you anymore. You will know. There is a necessary balance to this power because, like any true principle, it can be misused when divorced from responsibility, action, and self-awareness. I do not teach you to name yourself a millionaire while sitting idle, or to declare yourself a master of influence while avoiding every difficult conversation. That is not claiming, it is pretending. And the mind, in time, will reject false claims just as surely as it embraces truthful ones. The danger lies not in bold language, but in the absence of alignment between word and deed. What we are working toward is not self-deception, but self-leadership, the conscious decision to embody an identity that is in motion, one that is already taking shape through consistent effort, even if the results have not yet fully arrived. There is a vast difference between saying, "I am building wealth with discipline and clarity," and saying, "I am a billionaire," when no system, no habit, no plan supports such a claim. The first is a declaration rooted in direction, the second, a fantasy disconnected from reality. The men I studied never confused vision with delusion. Edison did not call himself an inventor because he dreamed of light. He called himself one because he was working on it day after day, failure after failure, refining his purpose through relentless action. Carnegie didn't claim to be a builder of industries because he wished it, he said it because he was already organizing capital systems and teams toward that end. Their declarations were not escapes from effort, they were commitments to it. This is why the naming ritual must be paired with honesty. Ask yourself, am I naming something I am actively creating? If the answer is yes, then your words become fuel. If the answer is no, then they become noise, empty echoes that weaken your integrity over time. I've seen people adopt powerful titles only to collapse under the weight of their own inconsistency, not because they dared to claim too much, but because they stopped there, believing the label alone would bring the result. But identity without action is performance, and performance wears thin. True transformation happens when the declaration becomes a standard, when you say, I am a disciplined man, and then refuse to skip the morning routine when you say, I am a leader, and then speak up in the meeting you used to sit silent in when you say, I am a creator, and then open the document, pick up the tool, face the blank page. That is how you avoid delusion, by letting the name pull you forward into greater accountability, not by using it to mask inertia. Naming is not the finish line, it is the starting gun, and the race begins the moment you speak the words. Not with pride, not with show, but with the quiet resolve of someone who has decided, once and for all, to stop hiding behind potential and start living from purpose. The moment you begin to name yourself with clarity and consistency, something subtle yet undeniable shifts, not just within you, but in the way the world responds to your presence. People do not merely hear your words, they feel the energy behind them, and they adjust their behavior accordingly, often without even realizing it. I've observed this countless times. A man who for years introduced himself as just figuring things out would be met with casual interest, polite nods, and little follow-up. But when he changed one sentence, when he said, instead, I help entrepreneurs scale their businesses with systems that work, quality of attention changed instantly, doors opened, invitations came, opportunities arrived unsolicited. It was not because his resume had changed overnight, nor because he had suddenly acquired new credentials. It was because certainty commands space. When you speak from identity rather than apology, people stop questioning your value and start responding to it. This is not manipulation, it is human nature. We are wired to follow those who know where they're going, even if we don't fully understand the path. Think of the last time someone introduced themselves with quiet confidence. I'm a doctor, I'm a pilot, I'm building the next generation of clean energy storage. Did you listen differently? Did you lean in? That reaction is automatic because definitive language signals internal alignment, and alignment inspires trust. I once watched a young woman at a networking event hesitate before saying what she truly did. She worked one-on-one with executives on communication mastery, had trained leaders in Fortune 500 companies, and charged premium fees, yet when asked, she mumbled, "Oh, I do some coaching, mostly helping people talk better, I guess." The person across from her nodded politely and walked away. Later, after our discussion on naming, she rewrote her introduction. I am a leadership communication strategist. I prepare top executives to speak with impact in high-stakes environments. At the next event, she used it calmly without flourish. And this time, 3 people asked for her card before she finished speaking. Why? Because she no longer invited doubt. She occupied her role fully, and others recognized it immediately. This is the ripple effect. Your self-definition doesn't just shape your own mind, it shapes perception, opportunity, and influence. When you refuse to name yourself, you leave a vacuum, and others will fill it with assumptions, often diminishing ones. But when you claim your title with calm authority, you set the tone for how you will be received. You don't have to shout, you don't have to boast. You only have to speak the truth of who you are becoming, and watch as the world begins to treat you like someone who belongs exactly where you aim to be. In today's world, the act of naming oneself has become tangled in a web of contradictions, where authenticity is praised, yet punished when it appears too confident, where humility is honored, even as it's used to mask indecision, and where social media rewards extremes, leaving little room for the quiet certainty I've always taught. On one side, you see the boastful self-promoter, the hustle adult industry influencer who declares themselves a millionaire before they've built anything lasting, slinging titles like weapons, mistaking volume for value. On the other, you find the opposite, the chronic understater, the one who hides behind phrases like just sharing my journey, no expert here, or still learning, but somehow helping thousands. Both are traps. One drowns truth in noise, the other buries it in false modesty, and both keep you from the middle path, the disciplined, grounded way of naming yourself with precision, without arrogance, without apology. I've seen men and women hesitate to claim their identity, not because they lack belief, but because they fear being misunderstood, labeled as egotistical, salesy, or disconnected from struggle. So they soften their language, add disclaimers, bury their truth beneath layers of irony or self-deprecation. They post their work online with captions like, "Not sure if this is good, but here goes nothing," as if bravery requires a disclaimer. But let me tell you what Carnegie once said about such habits. When you apologize for your power before you speak it, you teach the world to treat it as a mistake. True humility is not found in diminishing yourself. It is found in knowing your value and serving others without need for constant recognition. The man who says, "I am a mentor to young entrepreneurs with quiet steadiness," is more humble than the one who says, "Just trying to help, no big deal," while secretly craving praise. One owns his role, the other negotiates for validation. And then there is the pressure of visibility, the expectation that on social platforms you must either perform success or confess failure, with little space for the steady, unseen growth that precedes real achievement. Many now craft identities not based on internal truth, but on what gets likes, shares, or followers. They call themselves gurus to attract attention, or strugglers to gain sympathy, losing themselves in the process. But real naming is not for the audience, it is for the self. It is done in private, first thing in the morning, before the world wakes up and starts shouting its expectations. It is repeated not for show, but for alignment. When you define yourself clearly, you stop needing the world to do it for you. You become immune to the noise because your internal compass is set. So ask yourself, are you downplaying your role to fit in? Are you inflating it to stand out? Or are you naming it simply, honestly, as a fact of direction? Not perfection, not performance, but purpose in motion. That is the only ground from which lasting influence grows. Now that you understand the power of naming and the pitfalls to avoid, it's time to put this principle into motion through a disciplined daily practice designed to rewire your self-concept from the inside out. This is not a one-time exercise, nor a fleeting moment of inspiration. Lasting change comes not from intensity, but from consistency, the quiet, repeated act of showing up for yourself until your words and identity finally align. I call this the 7-day naming practice, and its strength lies in its simplicity. Each morning, without exception, you will speak your declaration aloud, standing with full presence as if reporting a fact rather than hoping for a future. Begin by finalizing your 3-sentence statement using the guidelines we've covered. Present tense, definitive language, rooted in what you are actively building. Make it real enough to believe, bold enough to stretch you. Write it down on paper, in a notes app, anywhere you can return to it daily. Then, choose a moment in your morning routine before you open messages or let the world in, where you can be alone with your voice and your intention. Stand tall. Breathe once, deeply, and say your declaration 5 times, slowly, clearly, matching each word with conviction. Do not rush, do not whisper, let the sound fill the room, because the body learns through action, and the ear believes what the mouth speaks. You may feel resistance on day 1, that slight discomfort in your chest, the urge to qualify or soften what you've said. That is not a sign you're wrong, it is a sign you're breaking through. That tension is the friction of old identity resisting the new. Acknowledge it. Continue. By day 3, the words will begin to settle. You'll notice fewer mental objections, less internal pushback. By day 5, you may catch yourself thinking differently during the day, making decisions, speaking in meetings, responding to challenges as someone who is, not someone who might be. On day 7, revisit your declaration. Has it changed? Does it need refinement to reflect how you now see yourself? If so, revise it, not to lower the standard, but to raise it in line with your growth. This is not about perfection, it's about progression. Some will try this for one day and dismiss it as just words, but the men and women who rise are those who do the simple thing consistently, who understand that repetition is the mother of mastery. Edison did not invent the light bulb in a flash. He tested thousands of filaments, repeating the same process until he found what worked. This practice is no different. You are testing a new identity, reinforcing it daily until it becomes undeniable. And when you do, you'll find that opportunities appear not because you chased them, but because you became the kind of person they naturally follow. The world does not respond to wishes, it responds to certainty. So stand each morning, speak your truth, and let the 7 days become the foundation of a lifetime lived from ownership, not apology. You were not meant to whisper your purpose into the void and hope it echoes back. You were meant to declare it, to speak it with enough clarity and consistency that your own soul begins to listen, to believe, to align. What we've covered is not a trick, not a slogan, not a momentary boost of confidence disguised as strategy. It is a law, quiet but unyielding, that operates beneath the surface of every lasting achievement. You cannot become what you will not name. The seed does not announce its intention to become an oak. It simply grows, rooted in the silent certainty of its design. But you are not a seed. You are a conscious mind, capable of choice, of will, of self-direction. And that means you must do what nature does by instinct, claim your form before it is fully visible. I have stood beside men who built empires not because they had more talent than others, but because they named their mission long before the world could see it. They said, "I am building this," while standing in an empty room. They introduced themselves as leaders while still learning to lead. They carried the title not as proof, but as promise, and then lived each day to honor it. That same power is available to you, not tomorrow, not when you're ready, but now, in the next sentence you speak about yourself. Will it be one that shrinks you, hides you, keeps you safe in the shadows of potential, or will it be one that calls you forward, that demands more of you, that refuses to let you settle for being understood before you are fully seen? Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for applause. The world rarely rewards those who ask if they belong. It rewards those who walk in as if they were expected. So name yourself, not with arrogance, not with illusion, but with the quiet authority of someone who has decided, once and for all, to stop preparing and start being. Say it aloud, write it down, live into it, and watch as your life begins to rearrange itself around the truth you finally dared to speak. Key takeaways and action steps. Let us now gather the essence of what you've learned, not as a list to be skimmed, but as a foundation to be built upon. These are not suggestions, they are requirements if you intend to close the gap between who you are and who you were meant to become. First, understand this. Language shapes identity. Every time you describe yourself, you are either reinforcing growth or reinforcing limitation. Vague, conditional words like trying, hoping, or someday keep your dreams at arm's length, safe from failure but also powerless to manifest. Definitive, present tense language. I am, I do, I build, creates internal alignment and compels action. Your mind treats repetition as truth, so choose your words with precision because they are programming your subconscious long before you realize it. Second, recognize that naming is not arrogance. It is leadership. To call yourself what you are becoming is not to claim perfection, but to set a standard. The most accomplished men I studied did not wait for external validation. They assumed the feeling of success, adopted the title early, and allowed their behavior to rise to meet it. You must do the same. Humility is not found in self-diminishment, it is found in knowing your value and serving others without needing constant recognition. Third, avoid the trap of delusion without action. A declaration unsupported by effort becomes noise. Naming only works when paired with daily discipline. When you say, "I am a disciplined man," and then make the hard choice when you say, "I am a creator," and then face the blank page. Let your words create accountability, not escape. Fourth, expect a ripple effect. When you speak with certainty, others respond differently. Opportunities appear. Doors open. People stop questioning your place and begin following your lead, not because you demanded it, but because you occupied your role fully without apology. And finally, commit to the practice. Identity is forged through repetition, not revelation. One bold sentence spoken once will not change your life, but the same sentence spoken every morning with conviction, that will. Now, here is what you must do starting today. 1. Write your 3-sentence declaration using present tense, definitive language. Make it believable, yet bold. Example, I am a confident leader. I make decisions with clarity and courage. I inspire others through consistent action. 2. Speak it aloud 5 times every morning, standing, eyes open, before you check messages or let the world in. Do not rush, feel the weight of each word. 3. Commit to this for 7 consecutive days, no exceptions. On day 7, review your declaration. Has your sense of self shifted? Revise it to reflect your growth. 4. Replace vague self-descriptions in conversation. When asked what you do, stop minimizing. Say it clearly. Own it. This is not a test of belief, it is a test of discipline. And discipline, more than talent, more than luck, is what separates those who remain potential from those who become powerful. The time for preparation is over. The time for naming. Truly naming is now. Remember, your success begins the moment you decide to act.